welcome to the final talk of this very first San Francisco Ruby conference. Just about in like 40 minutes, I think, you will know which city will host San Francisco Ruby conference in 2026. You might be surprised. You never guess. We'll know. But that's not the only surprise that awaits you, and not the only thing about the future I want to talk about today. I think we have a surprise, right? I don't know. OK, good. So I want to talk about Rails X, or Rails 10. No, it's Rails X. Maybe it's going to be Rails 10. Who knows? So I want to dream about a mystical, mysterious, probably, future version of Rails that may not happen or may happen, but that would accumulate requests and feedback from the community, as well as will try to catch up with ever-changing needs in the software engineering world. And yeah, I think that the goal of this keynote is kind of to plant the seeds of some new hope, maybe, because I'd love to see the future as something bright and not foggy and cold like San Francisco sky. Yeah, OK. Oh, it was on pause. OK. I spent so many, well, few hours, actually, generating this video. I have all these trains, but I didn't have time to record the video, so I decided to go with AI. It's kind of worked. Anyway, so we spent almost 2 days here at Forest Mason discussing Ruby, our beloved language, and sharing how we build future with it, right? That's kind of the primary topic of the conference. And let's talk about Ruby as a tool, right? That's just a tool we use to build the future. And usually we use it with Rails. That's the primary tool for most of us as well. So my talk is mostly about Rails. It probably could be applied to other Ruby frameworks, but it's based on the feedback collected from the Rails community because, well, it's a significant part of the Ruby community, right? So Rails and Ruby are just tools. And I think that tools must evolve together with their needs. You cannot use the same tools to solve future problems. And developer tools also must evolve. And I mean, the framework, the Rails, is also a developer tool, actually, right? It's not something else. And it must be, and must adapt to changes we face in our work and our life around us. So how tools keep up with requirements and the world outside? I know a bit about that because, well, I work as an open source developer sponsored by Evil Martians. Well, it's actually what I do most of my time when I don't have to be on calls with clients and do some boring stuff. And I've been maintaining, as an open source developer at Evil Martians, many projects, and many of them are actually already kind of teams. They passed 10 years, and they changed a lot during that period. And I have an idea, well, kind of, what are the main driving factors for software tool evolution? So what leads to the next version or to the future version? How do you come up with it, right? And there are kind of 4 components. So first of all, we reflect on the decisions made in the past, right? You should always reconsider, especially when it comes to like design and architecture and so on, what's no longer relevant, and you must maybe get rid of it or rewrite or whatever. Of course, you must listen to your users, to the community, to the builders who are using your tool. And you also must observe what your competitors are doing. Because, we don't want, well, as a software offers, we don't want our users to go to our neighbors instead of us for the next project, right? We still want to keep them around. Or at least we want them to come back when they realize that another tool was not as good. That's also good. And of course, we need to predict the future, right? We need to know what's going to be the next big thing or the next important thing to stay relevant. That's also an important kind of driver for decisions you make to build the future version of your software. So in this talk, I would like to apply this kind of a framework of building the future, a next version of whatever, to Ruby on Rails. And quick disclaimer on how I ended up with this talk and what are the sources, right? So it's not just my reflections. Of course, there are a lot of them, but I tried to, actually doing that kind of constantly, keeping notes of what's happening in the community, using all the available public sources and some private sources and conferences and from our clients, friends, and so on. So we cannot think about the future of Rails without considering community as its inseparable part, because Rails is, no one can decide what it's going to be, not a single person. We together shape this future. So that's why we must consider all this, opinions and feedback and so on. Let's start with the first part. Just to warm up. Let's think about what bothers users about the way Rails evolved up to this point. What maybe went wrong at some moment in time. What predictions failed, right? We kind of mixing this with the predict driver. That's funny. Yeah, my actual command I used to create new applications is much longer. It doesn't fit the slide. So let's see. This part is mostly based on the community feedback. So I did some math and tried to figure out what are the most popular items, but we're not going to start with the first one. We're going to start with the second one, and it's callbacks. So no surprises here, right? Personally, I'm fine with callbacks. I'm against of getting rid of callbacks completely. Instead, I think we should encourage developers to use them reasonably, to put them under some control. And for that, we probably need the way to understand what the problem with callbacks, at least we need a way to measure it, right? And a simple question you can ask and try to answer. Do you know how many callbacks are maybe the core model of your application has, like a core active writer model? Do you have any idea? Maybe dozens, hundreds. Surprisingly, there is no, Rails stats, for example, doesn't show this information, right? There is no easy way to identify which callbacks do you have in models, where do they come from. And we've been working with a lot of legacy code bases, and a couple years ago, we built a tool which we finally open sourced recently to help you answer this question. It's called Callback How. And it's just it's kind of a Rails stats for callbacks. So you can see detailed information about all the callbacks for your models, where they come from. Is it defined on that class or inherited or from some gem indirectly or from Rails core and so on, whether they're conditions, because that's, conditional callbacks, that's pure evil. And a lot of information you can use just run this command and see what's going to happen. Just a quick note, the manufacturer is not responsible for the numbers calculated. That's your minute of shame. So callbacks are bad and good at the same time. But let's not spend a lot of time on that. The third item on the list is more surprising, active record. The whole active record is actually considered by many Rails developers a thing that should not be. Well, that's a funny feedback. It's an architectural failure since Rails pre-1.0. So, well, who worked with Rails pre-1.0, by the way? Do you remember active record before that? What happened in 1.0? I don't know. I don't think it's a kind of joke. But yeah, but why? Why do you think developers don't like active record? I think they don't like it because it's the most powerful thing. And with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. We just can't afford, having that much responsibility as developers. And it's easier to blame the tool, not ourselves. So yeah, but the thing is, as with everything in Rails, if you don't like active record, or it's 300-something public methods, just don't use them. Use it as just a data transport layer, or like DTOs, or whatever. It's different language. Or you can use something else instead, right? You can use Rails without active record. We all know, like, I don't know, well, to be honest, I haven't seen that for a while, but I remember applications running on SQL instead of active record and doing fine. I think maybe even better. So Rails doesn't, prohibit you from using whatever domain modeling layer library you want. All right, let's move a little bit faster. We have a couple more items on the list. There are other sub-frameworks, and the usual concern about them, why do we need action mailbox in the core, like just for single application using it? And a similar concern was about action text, because, it's kind of high coupled with tricks, and tricks is already outdated. And like we have a lot of much better editors, but action text is not compatible with them. But now rumors that it's going to change, and action text is finally becoming a kind of a abstraction for working with rich text editors. So maybe we should keep them around. I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen. But it's not a problem that we have some stuff in the core that's not used by most applications. I think the bigger problem is that we don't have an ecosystem. And now let's start observing, right? Let's start looking at our competitors, and let's meet Laravel. We're going to talk about it a lot because, it's like Rails, but some consider it better, some worse. It depends if you prefer PHP or Ruby. Who prefers PHP here in the room? I don't know. Yeah, cool. You're a brave one. So I remember him, so I'll let you know. So the thing is, what I like about Laravel, actually I like many things, and you will learn about it. But the fact that it has, the framework has an official ecosystem. So official plugins that document it along with the framework, which is a good point. Especially, Hotwire users know that, right? Having something kind of official but not documented at Rails, rubyonrails.org is very strange. So I think we must learn something from our siblings or ancestors, I don't know, our cousins, I would say, because that's a good thing to have an ecosystem, and we don't have it right now. Okay, some minor stuff, like instance variables as a state propagation mechanism in views, right? Well, yeah. And another thing that also appears quite often is action pattern used in controllers. So instead of having a single controller with many actions for dealing with resource-based controller, you have a class per action that encapsulates dealing with parameters, probably invoking some business logic. So it's a different pattern, and it's known from other frameworks like Hanami. And if you like this pattern, just use Hanami. Like we don't need to copy each other like that. And the good thing is you can use Hanami right within Rails. You can try it. You can it even could be a good idea to maybe, to be honest, you should ask Stefan, and he'll probably tell you that it's not a good idea. But in theory, it could be a good idea to get a taste of a different framework without rewriting from scratch, like to write some part using it, to see different concepts and different abstractions without bringing everything into Rails, right? Okay, number one. And number one is always front-end management, how we deal with JavaScript, CSS, Webpacker, whatever. That's kind of the most unstable part of the framework since Rails, let's say 5, right? Since the introduction of Webpacker, and that's started this, ever-changing, this cycle of changing the way we think about the front end. So some feedback from random users on Reddit very valuable source. But it's good feedback. So the JavaScript story in Rails is kind of inconsistent. We change it every major version at least. No consistency, not solid. And the official kind of first primary solution for now is no build. And yeah, no build, no good working library load, no CSS through JS, no CSS packages at all. I don't know, the only good use case for import maths is using plain Hotwire, not using dependencies at all, but I don't think it's worth it. So speaking of the future, I don't think we can build future with such limited, with such constraints as no builds applies to us. So let's move further and talk about the second advanced, it's now called advanced assets pipeline. And well, it consists of at least 4 components. You can pick some, there are some alternatives. But that's, actually 4 components is not enough because you need immediate feedback to keep you inspired of changes you made. And we need some library loading component, which is Hotwire Spark, already dead. And I think it's too many batteries for the batteries included framework. We need to consume energy more recently. And luckily, even though the official guides do not mention that, the community found a better version of front-end integration for Rails, and it's called Vite Rails. Good thing about Vite Rails, if we continue observing our competitors, it's #1 and an official solution for both Laravel and Phoenix Elixir. They've been running on Vite for quite a time, and I'm sure they're happy with this decision, because Vite powers a lot of front-end infrastructure, I would say, not only in Ruby, PHP, or Elixir world, but in JavaScript world as well. It's a battle-proof solution. The only downside, kind of, for from the Rails philosophy, I would say, perspective, we need another infrastructure dependency. We now need Node.js to compile our assets, so we need to install it in production or in Docker container or on CI, everywhere locally. No, well, that's kind of a fair point. At least it was, but that's no longer an issue. Because, well, we can bundle the JavaScript runtime into a single executable and distribute it as a Ruby gem, which we've done with the bundle gem. It hasn't been kind of officially introduced, but it's already been used in production at Evil Martians. So the idea that the gem provides an executable and some gluing code required to transparently integrate into asset pipeline components. So you just install it. You don't worry about Node.js versions or whatever. It just works. This combination gives us kind of a yes-build future for Rails, not just for Hotwire or whatever is the primary way of building Rails applications today, but who that all, right? Why, I mean, for whom the Rails tells today at all? What's the proposition of Rails framework? And we've recently, in the last couple of years, we've heard a lot that, first of all, Rails is a one-person framework. A solo developer can implement an idea in a very short time. I'm not even speaking about Rails bros, right? They could implement dozens of ideas at a time. But being a one-person framework, being optimized for getting from 0 to 1, from an idea to the kind of product launch, I think we're missing other parts of the journey, right? 0 to 1 is just a single interval, and the journey is much longer. Because we have actually the first part, approaching 0 and staying around 0, how we get started, how we attract new users, how we onboard them. And then we have, I call them makers, those who working hard to get from 0 to 1. Then we have growing startups. They already launched, they already got some traction, and then are facing scaling issues, obviously. That always happens. And then there's the big Rails bros. companies and projects and so on. But in our listen part of the future discussion, I would like to target only these two groups, because I think these groups are the most important for sustainable future. So obviously we need new users. We always need new users because users leave and well, no one stays with framework forever. And we need newcomers to feel the beauty of Ruby and Rails, right? So that's one of the most important target audiences. And another one is growing startups, because that's the moment of their life when they can be disappointed at the choice they make, or the tech stack choice they made, right? We should not let them down. We should provide them the ways to grow with Rails. And I think that like these two intervals around 0 and from 1 to 2 are the most important ones. Others are important too, especially like big Rails, because they give us an example of what could be achieved with Rails. But we're not interested truly in solving their problems at the framework level. It's kind of the opposite. They give back what they learned, and they bring back some stuff into Rails, for example, when they ready to upstream it. But we should not. They are big enough to solve their problems. So let's talk about users around 0. Those who just exploring Rails or starting building something, just in making the very first steps. What do they want from the framework? What's missing from their perspective? So we have a Rails new command that creates an application, adds some dependencies and such, but in modern world, it's not enough. Developers want a quick way to set up some functional app with some logic already included, some resources already defined. Like a typical use case for Rails is building SaaS application. And SaaS applications have teams or accounts, users, and so on. Creating that everything from scratch all the time is just takes a lot of time and could be a source of kind of initial confusion on how to build things. If you already have that in the framework, it could act as an example of how actually things are built with Rails, and it's great. And again, well, many Rails users apparently know about Laravel, and they know that they have this problem solved. They have a starter kits, official starter kits. Again, same ecosystem part. Whoa, stop, please. We have something similar on Rails. Again, community-driven. I'm pretty sure a lot of attendees see this project for the first time. Have you heard about Rails bytes before? Yeah, that's like 5 people, right? We actually have this functionality in Rails. It's kind of barely documented, so templates. We can use templates to set up stuff in Rails. That's kind of generators. And we have a registry of open source templates you can use. There are not a lot of them, but you can see that being used by the community. Some open source projects maintain their templates, so to help their users to with onboarding. But nothing official, nothing again, no mention of that probably resource in the guides or whatever. No one knows about it, right? And even more, Rails new command. It's like 20 years old Rails new command. This is how modern new command looks like. It's Laravel, right? Yeah, Ruby. So it's beautiful. It's terminal user interface. That's a thing in 2025. It's interactive. It allows you to do a lot of stuff. Why can't we do that in Rails? For Rails new, for generators, it's must-have in 2020s, and it could be done. So instead of starter kits, what we do? Well, my starter kit is just a dozen of commits from one of the previous projects I worked on. So I just cherry-pick them and start a new project. And I repeat that every time. Because maintaining a template is time-consuming, so I just do that. That works for me, but there is no way to share it, to generalize, there's no good way to write such generators. So that should be a better way, right? There is a similar demand in addition to like generic starter kits. We also lacking UI components or UI kits. Well, at least developers think so. And in reality, there are dozens of UI kits for Rails. But why we don't use them? Who use kind of a ready-made UI kit for Rails? Maybe like Ruby UI. No, no one uses them. Okay, that's even better. I know some men who know something about assets and beautiful UIs, and I 100% agree with his point that most of a Rails UI kit built by solo developers and by engineers, but not designers. So they could be great for a single use case. They originally wrote them, but they lack this level, the quality that's required for a UI kit to be used by masses. I'm not even speaking about something official, at least for Hotwire apps. Why don't we have like flags for Hotwire built by folks behind Hey and Basecamp and Stimulus? That could be cool. Why? I'm pretty sure if we won't have something like that, a lot of people are going to use it. But, well, without having a component library, a UI component library, the whole Hotwire stack feels incomplete. And again, in these days, and especially in the future. No problems. There are alternatives, right? And this very fresh one. That's why I think one of the selling point of inertia in particular, besides many others, is that it gives you access to the whole JavaScript ecosystem. Oh, that is going to be cool. There's going to be recursion. Brett is taking a photo of his photo. OK. There should be a way to build something. Sorry, build something that would be HTML ready, not just JavaScript ready, in terms of UI component. Let's go to the part where users face scalability issues, growing with Rails. So there are different kinds of scalability. Scalability of code base or maintainability, scalability of teams, and of course like performance scalability. And the most common feedback I got is that, we lack service classes, we don't know what to put business logic, where our form objects, policy objects, and so on and so forth. So people want Rails to provide more concepts. Not necessarily classes, we don't need classes, right? But we need concepts. Because with just a few concepts that Rails provides out of the box, it's kind of hard to compress all the complexity that accumulates as a project grows. We need more. Oh, well, that topic deserves its own talk and maybe even a book. It's time. That's a shameless plug, right? The layer design for Rails applications. The book specifically talks about introducing concepts the Rails way into Rails applications so your code base stays maintainable. So we have a second edition coming soon. And that's actually, you can pre-order it now with some discount. Works only till the end of the week. Give it a try. There are some new stuff, new chapters, of course, on AI. 80-something pages. Could you make just one chapter? So yeah, let's move on. Scalability of code bases and teams usually work together with the concept of Big Rails, which is a code name in Rails ecosystem for modular architecture, engines, packages, slices, specs, you name it. But the problem is that how do you start modularizing Rails? Do you need it at all? We don't have clear answers to these questions. We have some tech. And like thanks to some big companies contributing to the community. But that's definitely not a clear path to the modularization when you need to deal with a dozen of tools. And I think we should probably think together and find something that requires less setup and like low configuration to go from a singular monolith to modular monolith, right? I believe we can make this horizontal code-based scalability easier in Rails. However, I tried to do that, to achieve that, and the result ended up with the same mess So non-usable. We stopped using engines after that, after realizing that, oh, it's freaking complicated. And the most problem here is that the framework itself requires a lot of patching and integration code to just make it work. Well, we'll see if we ever find a simpler solution to this problem. Let's talk about another one. Another one that corresponds to growing business needs to more complicated business processes. It's a workflow orchestration, how to manage and model multi-step operations. That's usually executed in the background, right? We need to keep track of progress, statuses, handle errors, and so on. What we have in Rails, we have Active Job. It's a great framework. It allows you to do a lot of stuff, but it's kind of modeled around executing a single step of the process, not the whole process, until recently. So now we have Active Job Continuation, which is a very young, very new feature, but it has the potential to solve this workflow orchestration problem the Rails way. The good thing about it is that it's already a part of the core, so it already provides some interface. And I think it's a good idea to build something more sophisticated on top of it, maybe upstream it later so everyone could benefit from that. This is actually, by the way, the code from our cloud generator app. It's open source. You can see Active Job Continuation live. I don't think a lot of you have tried that. So this feature is very new. There is no durability, the thing that Temporal is talking about, right? And they building their solution for that. No parallel steps on that, but that's a great foundation, at least interface-wise. Let's talk about performance a bit, right? What do people want today? Oh, they want native async support. I don't know what this means, like first-class native async support, since Rails got async kind of support, compatibility, let's call it, since Rails 8.1 almost. That means that you can run Rails application using a fiber-driven concurrency, and it's not going to break, right? It's going to work correctly, especially like active record. There is one bit that's still thread heavy and cannot be used efficiently in fiber-based service. It's action cable. It uses a hard-coded, like an architecturally hard-coded couple of thread pools inside. So even if you use fibers, you're not going to benefit from them. That's a known problem for a long time. And actually, there is a solution that existed for a long time in two forms, a PR to Rails and a standalone gem that could be used with all versions since Rails 7. And it does the following. Instead of having this hard-coded architecture, we separate abstractions from transports, like from servers, and you can use action cable with async and Falcon using like truly asynchronous handling of WebSockets, or you can use any cable, or you can use server-send events, or whatever transport you want with the same action cable code. So the gem exists, and you don't need to wait for the PR to be merged eventually, because it could take years. Trust me, I had a few PRs waiting like 5-6 years before getting merged. That's fine. Like Rails is complicated projects, and a lot of systems depend on it. You should not expect even a good feature to be merged, immediately. But I would highly recommend to check out the gem, because I think that if you're not using action cable next today, you're not running on the latest version of Rails. You'll always be lagging behind. All right, maybe you're already using it, because Async Cable Gem, which is getting more popular these days, is actually built on top of Action Cable Next. That's one of the reasons we built Action Cable Next. And the async ecosystem is growing. We have a lot of gems that allows you, with just a few changes in the gem file, to asyncify your Rails app. And that's kind of considered to be a scalability improvement. But we need to say that for one particular use case, any cable too, for AI scalability. And on this note, I think we should move to the prediction part. So what things we need to bring to Rails to make it a sustainable framework of the nearest future, I would say. We're not looking very far from now. I want to talk about the features that I think and based on the feedback again, will be vital, or not just nice to have, but vital tomorrow. So my prediction shortlist. Let me first quickly reveal all the items and then talk about each one of them in detail. First is developer experience. I think it's #1 priority. It's been a #1 priority for every software for quite a while, but its importance is not going to decrease. It's going to be more and more important because programming must stay enjoyable, especially in the Ruby world. Like, that's why we choose Ruby. And especially nowadays when our lives are full of fears. Fears of course, brought to us by AI. But that's the second point. We shouldn't fear AI. We must embrace it. Our tools must embrace it. Our frameworks. We should not resist this kind of a AI movement. And the final bit is Rails specific. I think Hotwire is already yesterday's tool. So we can build future with it. It's good, it still works, but it's not pushing us forward. But we don't need to deprecate it, of course, no. It's good on its own, but we just need more options. So more front-end options. I already mentioned Inertia.js, right? Inertia.js is actually also a Laravel born project. And it's being adopted by Ruby and Rails projects more and more, and we will probably see it as the most popular front-end solution for Rails in a matter of a couple of years, especially if we got some good materials on how to use Inertia.js. Maybe someone is writing a book. I don't know. Yeah, but, well, because what's good about Inertia? I think it could be framed as using JavaScript as a view layer for Rails and nothing else. So you don't need to deal with like APIs, serializers, whatever. Well, a bit. But it's just a view layer integrated, a JavaScript view layer integrated into Rails. Now, not a bunch of hacks that we had to do previously when we wanted to use JavaScript frameworks. Still, we don't need to ditch like Ruby and Rails-based front-end solutions. Yeah, competing with JavaScript ecosystem is hard, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So kind of a new native Rails view layer, HTML first, could also be better than it is today. And of course, I'm talking about like reaction view, kind of an idea that's still an idea, but it's very interesting and has a lot of potential. We also have other ideas in the community like live components, very new thing, maybe experimental, but I think it was at least following it. And yes, another option is Inertia. But to sum up, we don't need a single solution. That's, I think, the most important point of the future version of Rails. It should not focus on one way of building Rails applications. There must be options. And that's the goal of the future software. Let's talk about developer experience. Well, first thing that comes in mind, what's, again, a must-have in the future is better language servers and similar like developer enhancement tools. Again, I cannot not mention Herb. So, well, a lot of Marcus' work in this talk, well, obviously, we kind of are cycling back to the opening keynote. But again, these tools provide us kind of immediate feedback and frictionless code navigation. And those are key ingredients of developers' productivity. One might think that, oh, we don't need that a lot in the era of AI-assisted code writing, right? But I see it quite the opposite. When you don't work with code directly, constantly, just from time to time, because you cannot avoid working with code by hand, right? Even with using AI, it's not there. We're not there yet. So without that, referring to code from time to time, you don't have the context. You don't keep it in mind. And having hints and like some support from your development environment, which is provided by ISPs and such, is actually getting more important. because I'm not using LSPs because I'm still writing by hand and I keep everything in mind. But I see how it can be useful in that situations, and I think that's one of the future changes we're going to experience as developers, dealing with context, losses. So we needed some support to prevent that. Okay. Yeah, it's changing. So one interesting piece of feedback I got is that software should become a kind of proactive mentor. So it should tell you when you're doing something wrong, either through like linters, for some guards, for some other means of feedback built into the software itself, like preventing potentially unsafe operations and so on. We already have some tools that doing like that in the framework or in the ecosystem. Like in Rails, we have strict loading now, which is disabled by default globally, but maybe it makes sense to provide some kind of a middle ground and enable it by default in the warning mode. Well, not raising, but just informing users that you have a problem. Well, that's what kind of Prosopite is doing, right? And there are other tools that should not necessarily be AI-driven, right? You might think, oh, that's another AI agent. I just constantly run it, and it tells me what's wrong with my code. You don't need to waste like time and tokens on that, on the things that are deterministic and could be catched quickly and more efficiently with tools. If we, again, provide a higher level of introspection, I think, into the framework, and, well, just integrate them. Maybe add them as default gems into the gem file, right? Instead of something that we have there right now. Or mentioned in the docs, yeah, another point. Well, speaking of developer experience, we cannot avoid the topic of type safety. And it's a kind of a, painful topic in the Ruby ecosystem. But the thing is, speaking of new users, we should expect developers from other ecosystems, other languages, come into Ruby and Rails. And there's a high chance that they got used to types. And for them, getting used to the dynamic language without any typing information, any hints or whatever, any support again, could be tricky. So we're definitely losing a large portion of potential Ruby and Rails users by not 22 minutes? Yeah, I'm closer to, oh, no. Okay. But we as a community kind of resisting this idea of introducing types, right? And yeah, I agree with Matt. Someday in the future, types will become redundant. But do we have that much time to wait for that moment? I don't know. Another thing, that types are not only for type safety, it's not just a safety net, it's actually a source of information for tools. And again, AI tools. They need that information. So we need to talk about AI. AI is the part of our future. And we need the framework to embrace this and do as much as it can to make Rails AI native. So we can have AI generators that, like, not just AI generated, but AI enhanced. So you generate some code, then ask AI to update it, like maybe following the code style of the project or patterns from the project and so on, or mix and match some default rules and so on. Of course, first-class AI concepts, right? For example, in Laravel, they're working hard right now on introducing Laravel Agent, an official framework, agentic framework for the, Laravel. And we have some great ideas in the community. We just need to kind of embrace them, give them a try, and together make them maybe not an official, but at least a robust solution used by all of us. And we need code and runtime intelligence. What does it mean? So we need to provide as much as possible information to AI agent to make them more efficient, more accurate, like MCPs and similar tools, introspection, and documentation, like in-code documentation and so on. And finally, there's final piece of the future with AI as onboarding wipe coders. That's a huge group of new potential users that never existed before. Users without prior experience in writing code that we not accepting at all. Like wipe coders onboarding, I'm going to use the shorter term, like whiteboarding, let's create a new one. And obviously, we're losing the battle for whiteboarding to JavaScript ecosystem, right? Because they can onboard users directly in the browsers, right? You can just go to the project website and you can start writing code, you can learn about it, and you can feel if it's something you need. You can build a Ceph-Ruby website without leaving the browser, right? That's how it started, and even deploy it. The good thing that actually we can try to not win the battle, but at least fight back. So we probably heard about Ruby WASM and Rails WASM and our experiments with bringing Rails tutorial on WASM, which succeeded, and we presented it at a recent RailsConf. But today I want to borrow a couple minutes more. Sorry, I have a demo I want to show. That actually moved us forward. So together with both new, we can do this whiteboarding right in the browser with Rails. And let me show it how it works. Yeah. Just a couple minutes, I'm going to provide some comments, maybe. So that's important bit. You just open the browser and click on the link, and you have a working runtime. And you already have a Rails app. So that's where we're going to try. Yeah, let's see. It's a Rails app. It works. You can buy some pants. And you probably heard that recently there was a second part of this Rails tutorial came up, adding wishlist. So we're going to try to do that just using AI. Just let's grab the description and say, oh, OK, implement this feature. I don't want to read the tutorial anymore. I want to wipe code the feature and see what's going to happen. So it's going to be thinking, doing some stuff. Oh, yeah, that's an interesting moment. Not everything it works for Rails. Oh, you don't have Supabase database because JavaScript's applications use Supabase. We're not. We're using PostgreSQL running right in the browser because, well, that's possible thanks to Electric SQL folks. And yeah, maybe a minute of work, working hard, updating views, rows, and so on. And yeah, it's completed. Oh, yeah. Let's see what happened here. Well, some code. You can read it. You can edit it right there if you want. You can play and experiment. Oh, no, migrations. Well, we have this cool feature running migrations right from the browser, and it works in the browser. Well, too many browsers. So it works. You can add items on the wish list. The only problem, it looks ugly. We don't have UI components, UI kits, anything. And the Rails tutorial just looks ugly. Sorry, Chris, but that's something to work on maybe in the next part of the tutorial, right? Introducing some good UI, like modern stuff. Anyway, we can fix it with AI, right? Like, just make it look good. Well, a bit more thinking, adding CSS. And yeah, you see the logs are the same as in your terminal, but again, we don't have a real server here. So a lot of stuff in our CSS file, but now it looks kind of good enough for the first iteration. Well, there are some problems we can fix, but that's more of a demo of the boat. I'm not going to show it. We're out of time. So again, to finish this thought, we need to provide a way for non-coders to join the community. So to secure our future, we need to make Rails accessible to a broader audience. And we can do that together with companies actually supporting this conference, right? If their wipe coding tools would support Rails, that would be better for all of them because they run on Rails. They need Rails developers, right? Why not doing that? So yeah, OK, we need to wrap up. So are we on Rails X yet, maybe? Maybe X is 8, 8.1, 8.2, whatever it is right now. Let's first recall what we figure out what Rails X must be. It must be beginner and developer friendly. It must be AI native, and it must be ready to scale. So but a lot of stuff, right? And that's why I think it may happen, it may not happen. Depends on who's in charge. Maybe core team, right? We want Rails to be that cool. But the thing is, what I think is Rails X, the idea of Rails X is not actually the idea of the core framework, let's call it like that, is not Rails/Rails. Rails/Rails is just a frame, is a foundation we build upon. And from it, we only want to be robust and secure. Everything else could be done on top of it. We don't need to wait for a Rails core team to build all that stuff or convince them to build all that stuff. We can start building today. And you know what? That's actually happening right now. And the question is, who is working on it? Well, the answer is simple, all of you. You probably noticed that in my talk I mentioned a lot of speakers and a lot of talks and a lot of topics discussed during the conference. And when I was looking at the schedule and the people attending, I was thinking, yeah, that's the people building Rails. Those who giving talks, contributing to open source, building startups, sharing feedback, problems, and fears with the community. We all shaping the future, and we must continue doing that. So now, when you know that you're responsible for the future, let me give you one simple framework of what to do next, right? And what to try and what to keep in mind. So keep building software systems, keep sharing, and adopt new ideas within the community, or maybe get inspired outside of Rails and bring this inspiration to the community. And remember that Rails is not a single perfect idea. It's a messy quilt that we kind of are constructing together. Well, that's it. Thank you.